All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. This is part two of your update on Tropical Storm Helene. The first video today was all about the storm itself, the meteorology, and where it's going and what it's doing. This video will just be on impacts to Florida. We will mostly be talking about the Northeast Florida area. That's still where my core of people are, but we're going to do our best to cover what the state of Florida can expect as Hurricane Helene moves in. Again, for a very quick recap, Helene has been intensifying and organizing in the Western Caribbean Sea today. Maximum sustained winds about 50 miles an hour. The storm is closing off its circulation. It's really getting going. And we forecast this to become a hurricane by Wednesday as it moves over the tip of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It will begin to accelerate Thursday into the Gulf of Mexico. It will increase in size and intensity. As it does so, it is forecast to be a major hurricane by 2 p.m. on Thursday, and it should landfall as a major hurricane, likely category 3 or category 4 into that Big Bend of Florida going into late Thursday into Friday. Summary of watches and warnings in effect. Hurricane warnings are in effect for the Big Bend down to the Tampa Bay area. It covers Apalachicola. Hurricane watches extend up into parts of the I-75 corridor, Gainesville, probably like Perry area, and then up into South Georgia as well, north of the Florida-Georgia border. Not so much southeast Georgia, but more south-southwest Georgia. Tropical storm warnings extend from much of the central Florida area to about Lake Okeechobee and back down to the southwest coast of Florida, including the Florida Keys and Dry Tortugas, at least the lower Keys, upper Keys, and Miami. Not on any watches, and I don't think they're going to wind up with any, but we'll see how it goes. This bend out will probably protect you guys. Tropical storm watches in effect Lake Okeechobee back up the east coast of Florida, including all the Space Coast, northeast Florida, Jacksonville region, all the Jacksonville counties, and southeast Georgia counties under a tropical storm watch at this hour. So I want to start off by making a storm comparison. I hate doing this, but people are going to compare this to Idalia. They're going to look at that track and they're going to go, well, I mean, I remember Idalia hit the Big Bend last year and it really wasn't that bad in Jacksonville. Or, the Big Bend got some surge. It really wasn't that bad. It's all, it's going to be the same thing. Category 3, 4, whatever. It's blind bastards. What do they know? I want to start off with this. This is the Hurricane Idalia advisory at the top. This is when the storm was at 29 north, 84 west. So roughly about the same distance. This will landfall very close to where Helene will landfall very close to where Idalia did. Idalia's tropical storm wind field, the radius of tropical storm winds, how far out those tropical storm winds extend from the eye. Remember our radius from math class in like the 5th grade. Is the distance from the center outward. Okay, so it was about 120 to 150 miles from that center of circulation. Helene forecast along the same line of latitude or longitude, I guess this would be, I don't know, whatever latitude is, about the same distance from Florida. Okay, Helene will be a much bigger storm. Look at the 34 knot wind field, the tropical storm force wind field, 210, almost 100 miles larger in radius than Idalia was. This also will be a much larger storm in terms of 50 knots or strong tropical storm force winds and for hurricane force winds. The difference in 45 miles for hurricane force winds and 20 miles is significant. It will cause much more storm surge. It will reach much further. So do not think, Idalia was fine and we'll just be fine because it's going to be the same category. Like size and physical shape of storms matter a lot, and this will be a big deal with Helene. So I'm going to start the whole thing by just smacking the table on that. So storm surge is going to be the biggest thing we got to talk about with this one. Obviously, run from water, hide from wind. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge in this region is just going to be tremendous. It looks like it starts a little bit south of Cedar Key. I'm not even going to try to pronounce whatever we got going on right here. Even living in Florida my whole life, I don't have a degree in some of these places. To about the Lockney River, I'm going to go with 5 to 10 feet that way towards Apalachicola, and then 6 to 10 feet down towards parts of the upper area, Tampa Bay and St. Pete area, guys. So a lot of storm surge is coming with this. Tampa Bay itself could see 5 to 8 feet of water rise. Some of these little inlets going into the northeast could really get pounded with some heavy weather and storm surge. So even though it's going to stay offshore Tampa Bay in all likelihood, do not discount that 5 to 8 foot of storm surge threat. Even 3 to 5 foot down Charlotte Harbor down to Flamingo, even deep southwest Florida could get 5 feet of storm surge from this. So the water rise will be pretty significant along the coast, and the duration of this will come in fast as the storm is moving fast. A large, fast-moving hurricane will produce a tremendous storm surge, and I'm not even sure 10 to 15 feet will cover the max. So if you're in the Big Bend area and you're like, well, Idalia kind of wasn't that bad, I think we'll be okay. No, this will not be Idalia in terms of storm surge. This will be far worse. I don't know if we'll be able to verify it because of how the terrain is out there, but this is going to produce a tremendous storm surge. Please do not sleep on that. Otherwise, not so bad. 1 to 3 feet for the Florida Keys, and then some water rides will be possible from northeast Florida, southeast Georgia with that strong onshore fetch, but it will not be a massive threat. I think the overall coastal flooding could be something noteworthy for northeast Florida with the astronomical tides, but not tremendous. Let's show you the general timeline. I'm going to use a tool called HurEvac. This is an emergency management tool that we have at work. I'm not even sure I'm supposed to be using this open source, but if somebody yells at me, I'll stop using it. But this is showing the Tropical Storm Helene advisory and the potential for wind. So these little dots indicate wind potential. So, for example, the blue for Jacksonville, 48% chance of low-end tropical storm force winds, 9% chance of high-end in the yellow, and red would be the chance of hurricane force winds. So for Jacksonville, you can say pretty good chance of tropical storm force conditions, not so much for the other two. And then you can read this for your area as we move this forward. This is starting at midnight on Thursday into Thursday morning, and we're going to move this up so we can see Southwest Florida gets in on some of those tropical storm force winds by the morning hours. By lunchtime, we have these winds spreading into Gainesville, Ocala, Orlando, Tampa, Sarasota all getting in on it. Big Bend won't be far from it. And then by the afternoon, we go into 4 or 5 o'clock. As I skip this forward a little bit, we'll go to 5 p.m. The storm is a few hours offshore away from landfall. And by 5 p.m. on Thursday, the entirety of northern Florida and the peninsula of Florida is in on that tropical storm wind field. And as we go into the evening hours, those strong tropical storm force winds will begin to push into parts of Ocala, Gainesville, and the Big Bend. And then that large hurricane force wind ring will move in with those hurricane conditions in the Big Bend, Appalachia Bay, all getting a hurricane and a strong one at that as that moves in. So let's go ahead and talk about Northeast Florida and the wind predictions for you guys. This is from your National Weather Service showing your potential for 39 to 57 mile an hour winds. I think that's a reasonable guess. It looks like the stronger winds will be more to the west of town. This will be just like Adalia in terms of the further west you are from the beach, the worse your conditions generally are going to be. Gainesville I-75 corridor has a potential for high-end tropical storm force wind gusts. And then, of course, you go toward Valdosta and Tallahassee and Perry and Mason or whatever. I don't know. There's some other cities out there I drive through here and there, all looking at hurricane conditions with winds well over 100 miles an hour and greater than 100 miles an hour for parts of that coastline. Again, pretty nasty coming in. Flooding rainfall, less likely. Show you a couple models here. This is the HWRF VFV3 showing a potential wind gust. I think this is probably a pretty good call. The HWRF has really got a strong storm into the Big Bend, so I kind of like this wind gust forecast. You can see generally in the upper 50s to low 60s. Now, I want to caveat, this is 10-meter winds. This is a little bit above the surface, and it's kind of the worst-case scenario. So I want to show that worst-case potential, and you can see that most of northern Florida will likely be in that range for the 50s and 60s as I move my mouse around. Flagler and St. John's, maybe a little bit lower in the 50s, but then Putnam and Clay, depending on eastern or western Clay, 301 or so, you can be in the 50s to low 60s. Jacksonville, generally in the 50s to low 60s. Nassau, about the same. And then if you go west of that, you get into McClenny and other areas, you're looking much more likely to be in those 60s. I think this is a good high-end wind gust potential forecast, and that's what I'm going to kind of tell you guys a plan for is in Thursday afternoon, probably like mid-morning through the late evening, as in, overnight, maybe into 2 or 3 a.m., you're going to have about a 12-hour window where you're going to have winds sustained probably 25 to 35 miles an hour. This will be like low-end sustained tropical storm winds as it comes in. And then you will have periods of higher gusts into those 50s and 60s as this moves through. I don't anticipate much higher than that for you guys. And it could be a little bit better even than that, but I'm taking a model that sees a very strong storm, and I'm taking a model that is bringing it in a little bit east of some of the guidance to give y'all a better kind of reasonable worst case scenario. And then you can see as I get into Friday at 0Z or late on Thursday, the winds begin to die down as Helene moves to the north. Some of the local forecast graphics are kind of coming up still, but gives you another idea of the sustained winds. And this is for Middleburg, showing Thursday at about noon. It starts really picking up, going into the 40s or so for wind gusts, and this is showing about a 30 mile an hour sustained wind. I use this at work, but I always add some wind to it because it seems like it actually in reality is a little undershooting things. Ponte Vedra Beach local forecast showing about 55 on this, again would add some to that, in a long period of sustained winds above 34 miles an hour, which is that sustained tropical storm threshold. Kind of a big deal there. And Mayport also showing potential for into the 50s and upper 50s, low 60s. And again, another long sustained duration after the afternoon hours going in of a nice little swath of sustained tropical storm force winds until the overnight hours pre-dawn into Friday. So a nice 12-hour block where the winds are really going to get nasty. And again, caution you guys in Jacksonville, this is going to be a bigger, stronger hurricane than Idalia was. So if it's like, oh, I had a chair down in Idalia and the winds weren't bad, like it's going to be worse than Idalia in most cases. If this winds up coming in more west of you guys, this potential will come down some. But this is kind of more of a reasonable to worst case kind of scenario. Again, rainfall not going to be all that bad, 2 to 4 inches. The west coast of Florida, you guys are going to see more. Some of these heavier bands, I could see like 4 to 8 in local areas, and of course, the landfall point will be much higher, probably a foot locally. Luckily, Helene will be moving fast enough to where this won't be a massive threat, but localized flooding, typical stuff you see with a hurricane, will be likely that there. And then the threat of tornadoes is also on the table. We will have tornado watches area wide. So I hope that kind of covers everything. Again, for Northeast Florida, again, guys, you have most of you have today, and you have a good bit of tomorrow. By tomorrow night, rain start coming in and off station. Winds start getting a little breezy late Wednesday. By Thursday morning, you're going to notice the breeze is pretty steady. It's picking up. You'll have bands of heavy rain off and on, but it'll be kind of sporadic. It'll be real stop and start, long periods of not having much. By Thursday lunchtime to early afternoon, you're going to start feeling it. You're going to start feeling that sustained wind pickup. You're going to see stronger gusts. And then that late Thursday, like Thursday afternoon, like Thursday night around dinner time to maybe midnight on Friday is probably going to be the peak of this. This is when the storms are going to be the worst. You're going to have the strongest potential for strong winds. Again, 50 to 60 miles per hour is a rough estimate. Some folks are probably going to see well into the 60s. And again, that sustained is going to be higher too. It'll probably be sustained worse than Idalia was, and the gusts will be higher as well. And then that moves out overnight Wednesday or Friday, and then by pre-dawn to sunrise on Friday, things should be rapidly improving, and dry air will wrap around the backside of the storm and kind of cut that rain off for the most part. But some showers may linger into Friday for you guys, depending on where those convergent bands kind of set up. So that's what I got for you guys for the regional update. If I missed your area, let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. But that's the latest I got for you guys. So we'll have more tomorrow. We'll refine the forecast and we'll go from there. So until then, stay safe. Thanks for watching and have a good one.